Helldivers 2 has been in a tricky spot for the past few months, with most players feeling like the game just kind of lost its fun factor. It kind of lost being the epic shoot 'em up mob killing game that it used to be. I think mainly because the primary weapons felt a little weak, and just the game was difficult to enjoy because it was both easy but also annoying to play. Well, as of yesterday, Arrowhead may have just fixed the majority of the issues with a massive balance patch that basically buffed everything. And that's patch 1.1.100. Yeah. So there's this big long video where they go over it. We don't have to watch that for now. As an overview, they got here in the patch notes, major overhaul of the anti-tank armor pen health and armor values, which is the biggest thing. That's the largest factor that makes this a huge buff for basically everything. Some stratagem balancing, many reworks, the gas gameplay mechanic because the new gas war bond is coming out, which is going to be very exciting. So we're going to read through it all real quick. I'm planning on making more specific videos for each category of guns, like all liberators type video, because taking the time to make one gigantically massive video that goes over every change would be too much. So we're just going to read through the patch notes and then subscribe or check for future videos that go into more detail as to how each of these feel, because I've only used a few of them so far. All right, major updates. Helldivers, thank you for your valuable feedback. Many players have expressed feeling constrained. So this is just basically them saying, yeah, we've heard you, and now we're gonna look into making things better. The problems that they were addressing, that too many enemies and not being able to handle them. So to address this, we've reworked armor penetration, anti-tank weapons, enemy armor, and health values. Our goal is to improve the effectiveness of weapons such as the autocannon, heavy machine gun, flamethrower, and anti-material rifle against heavily armored enemies. Although they may not be as effective as specialized anti-tank weapons, they are now more viable choices. Yeah. Fostering more collaboration team front. Okay, on the bot front, Hulks have also had their armor reduced, making them more vulnerable to a wider range of weapons. Devastators and gunships have a limited supply of rockets, and they won't hit as frequently as before. Reduced blast radius, meaning reducing excessive ragdolling. In my experience, in the brief few games I've played against bots today, because I haven't had too much of an opportunity, that hasn't really meant too much. Like, you still get ragdolled a ton, but maybe not as much as before. It was a level 10 that I was in, so you're gonna get ragdolled. Hey, you play level 10, expect to get ragdolled against the bots. But made some improvements to primary weapons. This is probably the biggest thing in this patch that's worth talking about. Bring them closer in effectiveness to popular choices, bring more variety to your play session. All right, so this is the biggest thing. They talk about it here. Again, this is just the overview. Let's actually get into the actual changes, because I do want to get through everything. So, general balancing. Previously, partial damage dealt 50% of full damage. So that meant that if you matched armor levels, if you're getting red hit markers or just the standard white hit marker, that any damage you deal at matched armor levels, medium to medium, is only going to deal half of the total damage that your gun can deal, which we found to be overly punishing, reduced effectiveness too much, leading to an excessive reliance on high armor penetration weapons. We've now increased partial damage to 65% of full damage to address the issue. I'm not as big into analyzing exact numbers and breakpoints as other YouTubers out there, like Thick Fillet and others, but even just on layman's terms, this is a big deal. So that's for enemies, for enemy damage that we deal. But now for us, the Helldivers now take less damage from headshots, which previously dealt 100% extra damage, but now only inflicts 50% extra damage. This is something I felt almost immediately in my matches. There were instances where I got a spray from some bile spewer or a hunter hit just with normal medium armor that didn't feel like it. I didn't feel like I was dying as fast. Damage from hits to other body parts has been slightly increased depending on the area hit. This adjustment aims to normalize overall damage while maintaining detailed damage zones, reducing spike damage, which I think bears out in the game. Okay, so on to the weapon changes. Primary weapons, Liberator and Liberator Carbine. Damage is increased from 60 to 70. Good to see that. Durable damage increased from 14 to 17. Stagger force increased from 10 to 15. Spare magazine and starting magazine increased, which is very great. The Knight SMG, I was kind of confused what this was, but it's like a special SMG you get for pre-ordering the game. It's basically the Defender, I think. No, it's not like the Defender. I have actually not used this, I don't think. But, I mean, it got 15 points increase to its damage, greater durable damage, fully refill from resupply, and reduced recoil. Liberator Concussive. I haven't used this yet, but it now comes with a drum magazine, which holds 60 rounds. Number of mags reduced from 10 to 6. The number of mags has been reduced to too large size capacity. Okay, well, that makes sense. So this thing, from clips I've seen, it basically, you're just a turret. Like, you just can shoot forever. You can just keep shooting because it does low damage. It has a low fire rate. I like the versatility of how they've added increased magazines for the concussive effect with the reduced damage to balance that. So that's great. The tenderizer. Number of rounds in magazine increased from 30 to 35. Starting magazine increased from 4 to 5. So a bit more on the tenderizer. A few of these basically just have ammo increases. So the breaker now comes with extended magazine, which holds 16 shells, and the stagger force has been increased to 10 to 15. So enemies that get shot are going to kind of back up a bit more. It's not technically launch breaker because I don't think they changed the recoil, and I actually don't remember if the damage was changed, but yeah. The spray and pray, this is interesting, now has a duckbill muzzle, making its spread very horizontal but less vertical. So it very much leaning into the mobbing capability of the spray and pray to differentiate it from the breaker. Its total damage is also increased from 192 to 240. Okay, so the scythe, the cooldown is faster. Adjustments to the heat V effects, so it looks a little different. Scope change to a low powered scope, which I think means that you can't like scope in. It's just like the SMG scope. Removed recoil sets enemies on fire faster. I used this in a bot game and it felt stronger. I haven't used the scythe too much, but it definitely sets stuff on fire noticeably faster. So big buffs for the scythe. Crossbow. I never used this much. My brother has a bunch. The explosion radius is increased by 50%, so he's going to like this a lot. And damage is increased to 150 to 350. I've never used the crossbow too much, but these are some pretty big changes. I'll have to test it out or just use it. Again, I'm not a big cruncher. I'll probably include testing of the crossbow in, again, one of those more specific videos. The eruptor. Shrapnel is back, baby. We heard your feedback and reintroduced shrapnel. We've replaced the original shrapnel with the frag grenade shrapnel to no longer instantly one-shot Helldivers, with the exception of the occasional unlucky headshot. So shrapnel projectiles are set to 30. Damage is 110. Explosion damage decreased from 340 to 225, which is pretty big, but if they're bringing back shrapnel, they kind of wanted to reduce that. We're also increased the amount of shrapnel. The explosion radius increased by 33%, 17 for inner radius and 15 for outer radius. Very cool. So a lot of people, I've never been a big fan of the eruptor, but it's definitely back to viable territory with the shrapnel. The defender SMG damage increased from 70 to 75. Durable damage increased from 7 to 8. So you'll see this durable damage thing, or later on changes to armor penetration from 3 to 4. That coupled with the damage reduction change or matched armor level means that, again, things just die faster. They don't take as much. Liberator Penetrator. Damage increased from 40 to 60. I tried this out. I want to love the Liberator Penetrator, and with this one change of that additional amount of damage, it feels more viable. Like it's actually in a really good place now, the Liberator Penetrator. All right, Diligence. Damage increased from 125 to 165, and the durable damage increased from 32 to 42. So the Diligence is now pretty big. From what I understand of going to 165, they can now enter into the 1 to 2 shot territory for Devastators, which is great. That's what I've heard. The Counter Sniper similarly has increased from 140 to 200, with the durable damage increased from 14 to 50, and a stagger force from 15 to 20. I've used this against bots recently, and it plows through Berserkers and Devastators much faster than before, which is great. The Blitzer now is a weak stun effect that builds up per shot on its target. I've not used lightning weapons that much, but this is a big change. The Torture. This is probably one of the biggest changes in this patch that I love the most, which is the flamer mechanics reverted to before the escalation of freedom. That was probably the dumbest thing. That's what made me drop the game, was when they changed the fire just before the flame warbond, because I was most excited for the flame warbond, what with the fire resistance armor stats, and when they did, they also screwed themselves over. So they've reverted it. They've increased the damage of the Torture. That's one of the primary weapons. It's like a little flamethrower, and increased its armor penetration from 3 to 4. So just going all in with the fantasy and the fun of just your flamethrower, you're gonna go, which makes sense to me. Because if you're using the flamethrower, there's the risk of you burning yourself and being slowed down and being close to enemies. So it should be super effective. Otherwise, it's just completely useless. And everyone was running flamethrower against bugs, and then nobody was. And now it's back to being used. Well, this is the Torture, but the same applied for flamethrower and for the Crisper, as we'll see. The sidearm, the Peacemaker, increased spare magazines from 5 to 6. Nothing too amazing there. I do like the Peacemaker. It's actually kind of slept on. The Dagger, which is the laser pistol, gains heat more slowly, remove recoil, increased damage from 200 to 250, sets enemies on fire faster. Same with the Scythe, basically. The Crisper, same as the Torture, increased damage 50%, reverted the flame effect, and increased the armor penetration from 3 to 4. All right, so now we're on to the support weapons. So dedicated anti-tank weapons like the recoilless rifle Quasar, Commando, expandable anti-tank spear, and Patriot exosuit rockets have all received significant damage boosts to enhance their effectiveness. These weapons generally fall into 3 categories: strong and reliable. The recoilless rifle and spear can afford to be less accurate when fired at armored targets, since most hits will eliminate enemies the size of a charger. I've also seen the spear basically one-shot Bile Titans now. So yeah, strong. The expendable anti-tank and Quasar are highly effective, often killing targets with a single hit to a weak spot. Otherwise, 2 solid shots will handle a charger or 1 shot or a Hulk. And then less strong, the Commando and Patriot exosuit rockets typically require 1 to 3 shots to take down a Charger or Hulk depending on your aim. So those are the 3 categories for anti-tank weapons. They've obviously figured out where to place everything when it comes to fighting big enemies. It's good for this to be laid out carefully. All right, grenade launcher. Starting spare magazine increase from 1 to 2. Max spare magazine increase from 2 to 3. So just basically a slight explosion radius increase and a big increase to the ammo count. So you'll have 2 out of 3 instead of 1 out of 2 when you first pick it up, which is big because the grenade launcher goes through ammo really fast. All right, the laser cannon. Cooldown is slightly faster. Removed recoil, sets enemies on fire faster. Same with all the other laser weapons. Lower cooldown, no recoil, faster, set on fire. It can now damage heavier enemies like Chargers, Bile Titans, Impalers, and Hulks. And I felt this because before it did damage Hulks, but you had to hit their eye slit. But with this now, you can basically just shoot their body and over time they will just die, which is very interesting. I have some clips of that. All right, the arc thrower range increase from 35 to 55. Now has a moderate stun effects that build up on targets, jumps additional times, and durable damage increase from 50 to 100. So the arc thrower is much more effective now. Definitely going to need to try that out. All right, so the biggest thing in this patch, the one that a lot of people are looking forward to the most, almost to the point where I'm like, whew, this is a little much, is the railgun, which it's basically back to what it was in day 1 when everyone was basically running it and it was dealing crazy damage because the durable damage has been increased from its super nerf that it was at from 60 to 225, which means that shots to Chargers and Hulks and Bile Titans are going to deal much more damage. Fully overcharging damage increase from 150 to 250. Again, I'm not super familiar with specifics, hard crunch of the numbers. There are other people who go over that, but what this means is just you're basically 3 to 4 shotting basically anything in the game at this point. Chargers, Bile Titans, they'll all die in like 3 or 4 or 5 shots, depending on how good your charge is and how good your aim is. And yeah, so when I've run the railgun in games, I was basically able to shoot down a Bile Titan at a distance in like 4 shots. It's kind of ridiculous and it's great. It's fun. The whole point of this patch has been to overbuff because we want the game to be fun. It's already not specifically difficult if you know what you're doing, and you can always play a lower difficulty. It's all about helping us feel effective, and so with that in mind, I can give the pass on these railgun changes. All right, so the stalwart damage is increased from 60 to 70, durable damage is increased from 14 to 17, and stagger force increased from 10 to 15. The stalwart is a really good machine gun, mainly because you can run and reload. That's kind of why I would ever get it over the machine gun, just the standard one, which you have to stop to reload. But yeah, these changes make it much more competitive. The only change to the machine gun, as I mentioned, is a stagger force increased from 15 to 20. So yeah, enemies are going to be knocked back a little faster. So that's good. Anti-material rifle, let's get through these faster. Anti-material rifle, durable damage increased from 135 to 180. Can now damage heavier enemies like Chargers, Bile Titans, Impalers, and Hulks. Okay, so similarly to the laser cannon, the anti-material rifle, you can just basically shoot anywhere and you'll kill it. I kind of enjoyed when you had to hit the Hulk in the eye slit with the anti-material rifle, but I mean, with this now, that just makes more sense that if it's going to be anti-material, it's going to freaking be anti-material. So you can basically just shoot this thing at anything. Chargers, Bile Titans, the legs, the head, the body, and with enough hits will take them down. And the stagger force increase from 20 to 25 as well. So that's great. So the heavy machine gun stagger force was also increased 20 to 25 and can also damage Henry. Same deal with the heavy machine gun, is you can just basically shoot it towards any of these big enemies and it will deal damage within reason. I'm pretty sure, because there are still specific areas of these enemies that are more durable than others. So yeah, as long as you hit the body or the head, that's when that will be effective. The Commando demolition strength, that's the one with the 4 shots. It's like the anti-tank, expendable anti-tank, but there's 4 of them. And they deal a little less damage, I think, but you have 4 of them, so total damage is higher usually. Demolition strength against structures has been reduced. This is like the only negative, like that's not a buff, basically, like explicitly a buff in this. It can no longer destroy automaton fabricators in a single shot, which apparently you used to be able to do. However, since fabricators now have health, which is something we'll get into, it can still take them out with 2 shots. So yeah, we'll go over that. But actually, I think that's one of the only mentions. Basically, that bot fabricators now can be destroyed just by shooting them with these bigger guns, with these bigger support weapons. You don't have to hit the weak spot or throw a grenade in. You can just shoot them enough times and they'll die. So this is just the Commando's contribution for that. Okay, flamethrower. Really excited again. Mentioned this earlier. Damage increased by 33%, so not 50, because it was already pretty good, because you could get that booster that increased stratagem, fire stratagem damage. So that actually applied to the flamethrower. So that's probably why they only increased it a little bit, because there was already that increase. increase the armor pen to 3 to 4, can now damage heavier enemies like Chargers, Battle Titans, and Peos and Hulks. I mean, it could do that before, but I guess that's just them explaining based on how the armor pen damage reduction thing that we mentioned earlier applies to the flamethrower. So that's a little redundant, but autocannon can now damage heavier enemies. Yeah, same deal with the autocannon. Frag grenades, the frag grenade shrapnel damage increased by roughly 50%, max amount increased from 4 to 5, refill increased from 2 to 3, and explosion radius increased. So your standard frag grenade, which may or may not, feel very effective, they boosted it so that you have more of them and you get more of them so that you can throw more of them, and their damage has been increased. And they have shrapnel, which I've seen. Thermite grenade. This is probably the biggest change to the game and allowing you to change what you can bring to the match if you're careful, because thermites are still kind of tricky to bring. You have to get kind of close to throw them, but their explosion damage has been increased from 100 to 2000. So this thing does basically the most damage in the game, besides stratagems, things that you can just actually throw. And so basically 2000 will one-shot Hulks and Bile Titans, basically, if you hit them in the face. Actually, with Hulks, it just kills them outright. I've done that. So you just can throw it and stick it to them and they will die. Shorter time until it ignites the thermite. Time until it explodes slightly reduced. Max number decreased from 4 to 3. That's another just straight up, the only straight up debuff in here, just as a way to balance that, because these thermites really now are a good way of diversifying your loadout opportunities. Okay, so on to the stratagem changes. Not very much in here. Every stratagem capable of damaging heavily armored enemies has had their damage increased to account for the increased health of heavier enemies. The goal with this change is to have the stratagems on a similar or higher power level than before. In addition to that, we've made the following changes as well. The Eagle 500 kg bomb explosion radius increased to match visuals better, which makes so much sense. It always felt like the light and the explosion and stuff never really reached their enemies that you see get hit but not get hit, and I've noticed I have a few clips where it definitely is noticeable. This is very, very noticeable. Eagle rockets damage slightly increased. Gatling sentry stagger force increased from 15 to 20. Machine gun sentry same. Tesla tower increased stagger force to match other arc weapons and now has a moderate stun effect. That stun effect may or may not work on bigger targets, but that's very good to see. Heavy machine gun emplacement stagger force increased, can now damage heavier armor, heavier enemies like Chargers, Bile Titans, Impalers, and Hulks. So same deal that we've seen before as part of that damage increase. Patriot Exosuit's Gatling stagger force increased from 15 to 20. And the Emancipator Exosuit autocannon durable damage increased from 60 to 150, which is a big deal. I've used the Emancipator a few times. I'm not a big fan of bringing exosuits usually onto my missions, but now the Emancipator will deal a lot more damage compared to before, with increased rate of fire and ammo from 75 to 100 per arm. So the Emancipator is now very competitive, especially on super Helldives or others where you really need to get the damage out on bigger enemies. Orbital laser damage slightly increased. Same with the rail cannon. Orbital gas strike. We are reworking the gas gameplay mechanics to become more crowd control focused in preparation for the chemical agent's war bond. The gas effect has been reworked to cause blindness and confuse enemies and Helldivers alike at the expense of reduced damage over time. So basically it's a trade-off to make it different than the flamethrower, which was something all of us were thinking, like, what the heck, the new bug spray with the chemical, the gas effect spray or flamethrower, like, how is that any different than the flamethrower? Well, it's going to cause blindness and confuse enemies, which is great. I've not actually tested this yet, but I did see it a little bit, and so I'm curious. I need to look into that. We're gonna go I'll make a video going over these stratagems and how they feel, more specifically probably the gas strike and maybe the exosuit and Tesla tower changes, because the others, like the stagger force, you don't really notice that much, but yeah, that's big. Okay, gameplay. Some very light stuff in here. I don't know why I'm saying that. There's actually huge changes in here, but not super big. The Galactic War Map can now display the location of strategically important assets. This will make it much easier for Helldivers to take them into consideration when deciding on their next move. So this is basically Helldivers' way of communicating to people who maybe aren't super involved with paying attention to the major orders or paying attention to releases or updates that are outside the game, where they're in their game and they're selecting a planet. They can see what they're going to unlock if they fight on that planet. And so it's just to kind of get people on the same page a bit more. Emo wheel feature. Players can now equip 4 emotes. That's great. I used that. It was a lot of fun. They basically just added a second keybind in the settings that says open keybind, open emote wheel just below just emote. So you can still just emote if you want. Enemies. Oh, they added Dolby Atmos for PS5, if anyone cares about that. Enemies. Automaton fabricators now have health and armor in addition to their existing destruction system. That means that while many high armor penetration weapons can still destroy them, it may take multiple hits to do so depending on the weapon used. Added effects to clear showcase their health state. So now they have different effects for when they're damaged or low. So before, the spear could basically one-shot fabricators, but now they probably still can, or maybe they'll take one or two, depending. Hulks, all versions. So the flamer and the shooter one, armor reduced from 5 to 4. Back weak spot, slightly more durable, so you can't destroy them by shooting their back as quickly in the back weak spot. Oh, so this is them explicating that. I don't know why this feels a little more. Oh, slightly more durable, so durable damage now needs to be higher to damage it, and then its actual health pool has been decreased. So, okay. Hulk Bruiser, replace the rocket launcher for an energy-based cannon, increased how frequently the Hulk Bruiser shoots. So there's a particular Hulk as opposed to just the all versions, but this one in particular, which doesn't have a rocket launcher anymore and just shoots a ton. Kind of like the tank, the one that just shoots like crazy. All right, so the standard tank, front armor increased from 5 to 6. The Berserker, those are the ones with the chainsaws. Head health reduced from 150 to 125, so you should be able to kind of pop that canopy and, you know, kill them if you're hitting headshots faster. Main health is reduced from 1,000 to 750, and the abdomen is now a weak spot. So that on top of the chainsaw damage increase means they're a bit more of a glass cannon, which is meaningful because those things always felt like they were just super tanky, and now you really have to deal with them because they'll run you down and they'll cut you down, and so you can actually kill them faster now. So Devastators, all versions, main health reduced from 800 to 750. Devastators now flinch when hit, causing their aim to worsen, similar to the conscripts. Those are the little ones. The intent is to make them easier to manage if you keep applying damage, which is great because I remember somewhere in the game it talks about how the automatons, it's kind of part of the fantasy, part of the role play of like, oh, they have targeting algorithms that get kind of screwed up if you shoot at them, but I feel like that hasn't really meant anything until now, where if they get hit they'll actually flinch, because before they just didn't care. They just, oh, you're shooting me, I'll shoot you back. So that's good. Rocket Devastators, this was something that we've been looking into a lot. Rocket Devastators now have limited number of rockets, and you can see them disappear when they are spent. I think they still go into the animation to shoot them, but just can't shoot them. I think I have a clip of that, but maybe not. Added a reload mechanic for their backpack to replenish their rockets once. So that's interesting. Just a bit more mechanics to the Rocket Devastators, make them less of a, you know, just annoyance, but actually have some gameplay variety to them. Their collision physics for their rockets is smaller, making them easier to avoid. So you can basically run from them a little bit better and avoid them and not get staggered. Like you dive and they'll hit next to you, but they won't totally stagger you, which is great. Similar to the gunships, now have a limited number of rockets and smaller collision to make them easier to avoid. All right, so for the bug side, the Charger, all versions of the Charger, armor has been reduced from 5 to 4. The butt weak spot, the butt weak spot health is decreased from 1100 to 950. The butt weak spot is slightly less durable. The belly armor is reduced from 4 to 2. So the strat of dropping a grenade so that it times it so that the Charger runs over the grenade will be more effective, or if you use a grenade launcher. A damage multiplier has been added to the Charger's exposed flesh of the main body, now dealing 300% damage. So now if you strip a side armor plate and expose their flesh, or strip the legs, those will kill the Charger way faster if you shoot them. They now turn slightly slower when they're charging or just moving in general, making, I suppose, it a little bit easier to avoid them. In my games where I've played thus far, you know, did I notice that? Well, everything's just hectic, you know, you're just running, but they charge less often. I feel like I did notice that. I didn't feel like they were on my butt as often, but their charge damage is increased by 50% and their side attack. That's definitely the case. When I've been hit by the Chargers after this patch, I feel like I've died more often, like a noticeable amount. So the Charger Behemoth, the weak spot health is decreased from 1200 to 950 because that was bigger than the standard Charger. Okay, the Hunter health has been reduced from 175 to 160, which puts it just under being able to be one shot by the Diligence in the counter sniper and other guns, which is great because Hunters also, kind of in the same way Devastators and Berserkers did for the automatons, have just felt a little stronger than they should be. So Hunters are a little bit easier to deal with. Same with scavengers, health reduced from 80 to 60, which basically means they'll get one shot by everything in the game, which is how it should have been. It always felt weird when you hit them and then they don't die and you're like, what? So you have to melee them or shoot them again and use up ammo. So that's almost a DPS increase because you're spending less ammo on them. All right, the Bile Titan. Armor's been reduced from 5 to 4. As we've seen, reworked the Bile Titan's belly gameplay. Ah, yes, I love some belly gameplay. That's an actual sentence. That's awesome. Belly gameplay. Belly armor reduced from 4 to 2. I guess that's part of the gameplay. Introduced a separate belly health pool once the outer belly layer has been destroyed. Destroying the exposed belly health pool kills the Bile Titan. So this is an effort to make using your main primary weapons like a Liberator or others that you have more viable shooting underneath the Bile Titan, because before, I mean, you dealt damage, but it wasn't going to do that much. But now it actually has a separate health pool, so that once you can actually damage it and reduce it, it's faster basically to be able to kill them. So that's great. I mean, the opportunity you'll have to use that, I mean, it's big. Most of the time when I played, someone had brought a spear, or you can use the thermite grenade and basically just one-shot them, or use the railgun and 3 or 4-shot them. The Impaler, armor reduced from 5 to 4. Previously, the Impaler could only retract its tentacles once during its entire lifetime when threatened. Now it can do it several times. So that meant that once the Impaler put his arms out and then put them back and then put them down again, he could never pull them back up. He would just be stuck. When threatened. No. What this meant is that it can only retract its tentacles when being shot once. Now it can do it several times. So anytime it's down and you start shooting it and don't kill it, it can go like, oh no, and pull back up. So in addition, its tentacles pursue you over a shorter distance from the Impaler and prioritize players nearer to the Impaler. If the Impaler can't see an enemy, it will retract its tentacles after a brief period. So yeah, just making the tentacles a little less annoying to deal with, because they pursue you over a shorter distance and prioritize near to the Impaler, so you won't feel like it's just appearing out of nowhere and you have no idea where it is. So that's a big deal. The tentacles damage is increased, so if you get hit by a tentacle, that's a bigger deal. Reduced camera shake. The tentacles require less damage inflicted on them to retract, so you can shoot them and kill them and make them go into the ground faster, which is great. So the Impaler, you know, big new mob, only been around for a little bit. Great addition. Very, very annoying. Slightly less annoying. So that's good. All right. So that's the majority of the changes to everything. There's only a few changes to the planet modifiers and then a bunch of fixes, which we can address, but there's a ton of them. Most of them are just crash issues and, well, we'll go over it. Planet modifiers. The intense heat and extreme cold modifiers are no longer static throughout the entire mission and may now change based on the time of day or different weather conditions. What is this? Flippin' simulator. That's great. That's actually really cool. Some desert planets will now only have the intense heat modifier active during the day. That means during the night, planet that you will have no modifier, or in some cases have the extreme cold modifier. This game's basically turning into Minecraft. It's coming closer to Minecraft. That's what we want. The day-night cycle mechanics make any game feel AAA. Well done, Helldivers. Arid planets similar to the Hellmire planet will now only have the intense heat modifier active during fire tornado storms. So apparently before, arid planets, just planets that fall under the arid and not like the hot, will now only have the intense heat during firestorms, which makes some sense. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly go over these fixes because this is already a very long video. Fixed per weapon aim mode not saving correctly. Note this patch will clear all the saved aim modes, but everything should work correctly afterwards. I noticed this actually. I was like, wait, whoa, why am I zooming in? So yeah, they fixed the aim mode per weapon. Bunch of crashes, crash, potential crash, fixes, soft lock, social menu fixes PS5 friend list, miscellaneous, evacuate high value assets objective. So that's the one that's like a tower defense. Fixed issue where they spawn on top of extraction. They can't shoot, enemies can't shoot generators from far away. The pathing issues where they just kind of run into the mountain is gone. They added more protection to the generators so that they can't get hit. Flying enemies now attack the players rather than the generators and the gates, so they don't just kind of totally avoid you and make the game obsolete. Fixed an issue where enemies would stop spawning for a period of time when the host leaves the mission. That's great. Okay. Conduct a geological survey objective. Fixed an issue in conduct geological survey mission with the seismic probe would become inoperable. There's also an issue I think they fixed in here similar to the nuke hives nuke nest mission because there were a few times where I had to leave the game because it became inoperable when the host left. Tweak some enemy spawns. Impaler. Fixed a bug where Impalers didn't receive explosive damage in their exposed area. Fixed Impaler's tentacles not being pingable. They're pingable now. The 3 following instances have been largely resolved, and the issues are now mostly fixed. Although rare occurrences may still happen with the Impaler in exceptional cases, they should be significantly less common. Fixed a bug where standing near the Impaler's head during the tentacle retraction caused Helldivers to be launched into the air. So like when it goes whoop and pulls its tentacles back up, you get flung into the air. Same with when the tentacles spawn beneath you, but that was kind of funny, I gotta be honest. Fixed a bug where the Impaler's tentacles could sometimes launch the exosuits in the air when the player was inside. Those are kind of funny, but it's good that they're fixed. Fixed enemies not receiving damage properly when more than 10 meters away from the player, which I didn't even know was a thing. That's apparently was a fall off issue. Bile Titans sometimes not take damage to the head. That was a big thing, that they had like a head plate glitch that, especially when they're spraying, where they just, you know, couldn't receive as much damage. So that's been fixed. So that's big. Causing most weapons to shoot below the crosshair has been fixed. Hive breaker drill might become inaccessible after being called in. That's exactly what I was talking about. Fixed issue with the first person view is misaligned with weapon sights when using the ballistic shield stratagem, which is basically a useless stratagem except for the bots. It's actually been really good. I haven't used it in a bit though. After the changes to the defender, it might be really, really good. Or the crossbow, because that's also one-handed. So that might be a big move. HMG scope is no longer misaligned. Fixed lines cutting into scopes. Bugs. Fixed bug where multiple confidential data pickups could spawn in the same stronghold when only one is intended. Fixed 2 persons emotes getting players stuck in animation locks. Cinematic missing. Cinematic missing audio in German. Okay. An instance of automatons shooting through walls. Well, let's hope so, because that's actually a big issue. That's one of the first things I noticed about the game is that, oh, the ground is destructible, which means that, I don't know, the way they have the geometry instanced means that it's going to not play well with the AI, especially when things start getting pock-holed and, you know, blown up. Fixed a bug where sometimes preference objectives are shown. Weapon preview and loadout not being visible. Eagle payload sometimes not blowing up in swamp biome. 0 word on the mission summary objective screen. Yeah, anyway, bunch of fixes. Not going to worry about them too much. Fix some ragdoll, motion control, aiming. There's a lot of good stuff in here. Just basically made the game a lot better. We don't need to go over it. There's some known issues. Not receiving friend requests. No audio cues. Hope they fix that. Trying to shoot the generator through. So these are things that they haven't fixed, but they're working on them. So there's still an issue where they're shooting generators in that high value assets mission. Enemies just still able to shoot through walls. I figured, yeah, like just based on how the geometry works, I don't know if they'll ever really fix that, because even if they don't shoot, they will know exactly where you are. I have a clip of me just running up to a wall and a rocket devastator or a rocket guy just shooting me the moment I peek my head out, because it had been targeting me and shot me the moment I was visible. So they could fix that. Dead bodies of charges can launch the Helldiver into the air. Strategy balls bounce unpredictably off of cliffs and some spots, so making stratagems a little bit stickier and actually landing where you threw them. Players may sometimes be unable to join specific friends or return to ship when joined. So just, again, they've been dealing with this since patch, man, dealing with these issues of connecting. Medium priority, those were top priority. Medium priority reinforcement may not be available for players when joining progress. Mines may become invisible or may disappear in multiplayer lobbies. This, I wish, was in top priority, because that's actually a big issue. Where it's like, oh, they're not there, but then you run into them if you're in a multiplayer lobby. Pelican 1 maybe sometimes be launched to wave hit with an impaler. I've not seen that. Impaler just absolutely yeeting Pelican, but that's really funny. Fly packs may be incorrectly used to pressing down the controller. Whatever. Friends invite only games can be seen on the Galactic War map but cannot be joined. Hope they fix that. High damage weapons will not detonate hell bombs. Like if you shot a recoilless rifle with hell bomb, it doesn't explode. That's an immediate priority. Some enemies that bleed out do not progress personal orders in eradicate mission. So they're working on fixing that. All right. If I can echo this with this video. If you've made it this far in this release, Captain Kahlberg, Vice Admiral Irie, and Chief Correctional Officer Baskin signing off. May Liberty guide your path. Helldiver. Very cool. Those are the patch notes. Figured I'd read through them, and then we're gonna make some more specific videos talking about each kind of category of different changes as I play and use them. But I figured I'd get a video out talking about the patch notes because I liked the thumbnail I made and everyone's doing it. So I'm just kidding. No, it's good. All right. Thanks for watching.